Today we will be creating a website using a WordPress plugin called Elementor. So this is a plugin that allows you to create websites in a very interactive, very visual way, and it has more possibilities and it's more intuitive than the default editor in WordPress. So we'll see how that works. So we're going to create a website similar to this one. So you can see that we've got this main area. There is also an area at the top, which is currently empty, but this is where a menu could go. We will have just one page, but of course you could have menu items for individual sections of the page. So one-page websites are quite popular and they are quite convenient to view on mobile devices, on mobile phones, on tablets, but also on the desktop. So basically it's one long page with different sections which have a similar purpose as individual pages, basically. So here we will have only 3 such sections, just to demonstrate how this works. Of course, this is not perfect in terms of design. I created this quickly, but we will try to do a slightly better job. So we will have these 3 sections, and you can see that if I click here, I go to this last section. So you can link between the sections. We will also have a form, and we will have a Google map. So this website is on my Camilo server, but now I will switch to the 000 web host server, where I've got the website that I created last week. So the first thing we'll need to do is to install this plugin, obviously. So I'm going to go to the dashboard, and here in plugins you can see that we've only got this WP Forms, which we will also need. But we need to add this very important add-on. So it's called Elementor. And activate. Right, there is a short overview video. You can also get the full guide. So basically that's a web page where you can find all kinds of tutorials. So you've got video tutorials, you've got a knowledge base, because it's quite an advanced editor with lots of features. So if you want to use its potential, you would need to study the tutorials, study the documentation. So we're going to only touch the tip of the iceberg here by just using some of the features. Another thing is that this plugin is free, but there are pro features. So if you want some more advanced features, there is a paid version. So let me just move back here. And so with Elementor, we basically just design pages. And this doesn't really interact very well with a website that is already themed, that has a theme applied to it, and you've got all those elements. So if I try to edit existing pages, there might be some issues. So usually the idea is that you start editing new pages with this tool, or perhaps if you have very simple pages in certain themes, you might be able to actually work with them. But the normal workflow is to start with a blank page. Of course, in WordPress, you are always working with a theme. So the question is, what features are turned on, what features are turned off? So let me just demonstrate here. If I try to work with any of these pages that I already have, so I've got this website, and I've got the different pages, and you can see that at the top it says edit page. So this is the WordPress page editor that we have been using. However, if a page can be edited with Elementor, you can usually see this extra option here, extra button, saying edit with Elementor. Not always, but usually when a page can be edited with Elementor, this item should be here. But we can also try to go to the dashboard and look at the pages, the current pages. And if I hover my mouse over these items, you can see that I don't have the option to edit the page with Elementor. So that's why we're going to add a new page. So let me just add one page with Elementor, just to get a feeling for how to edit pages with that tool. Because later we're going to delete all the pages, we're going to install a different theme, and then we'll start creating the website. So first, let's add that new page. And it's important to give it a title here. We will not be editing anything else, but we need to set the title so that the page is named properly in the page structure. So since this will be the only page, we can just call it English Services. So I'm going to continue the theme of, or English Language Services, the theme of this company or service, right? And you can see that at the top we have this option to edit with Elementor. So we need to click on that. And then we are in the Elementor view. But you can see that we have the settings of the theme, right? So we have this menu area and this heading area, which are the default ones for each page. And only the content can be edited with Elementor here. And that's the general rule. With Elementor, basically you just edit the content, and you can choose to use the heading or header area and also the footer area from the theme. But you can also choose to turn it off. So it's all in the settings. I'm going to demonstrate how to add some content. So you can see that you've got this area here, and there are two options here. You can add a new section and you can add a template. So we look at templates a bit later, but when you click on this, you can choose your structure. So the default structure of your section, not the whole page. So basically here we're working on a section level. So you can add sections with different layouts, different number of columns. And even if you select a given layout, you can later modify it and you can change the width of the columns and so on. It's all very customizable. But you have these basic structures. So if I start with the double column layout, you will see that I've got this section. So we have sections surrounded by this blue border, and we have these widgets here. So you can add another section, you can edit the section. So if I click on this, it tells me that I can use the right click. But also, when I click on that, the options, the settings for this section appear in this left panel. And of course, this left panel is where everything happens. So, of course, you can also delete the section. So when I right click, I've got a few options. I can duplicate the section, I can copy it, I can save as a template, and I can also delete it. I can go to the navigator, which we'll look at later. So there are a few options, but you can see I've got these two columns. So you've got sections. Inside sections, you've got columns. So you can have one column, you could have multiple columns of different widths. So this is like the second level, the columns. And the third thing that we'll be working with are the actual widgets, the content, the different elements. So you can see some of those here. So you can have things like heading, image, text editor. So this is basically inserting text and being able to edit the text visually in a visual way with all the different controls. Yes, so you've got these basic widgets like video, a button, divider, spacer, Google Maps. You've got some pro widgets, so these are the ones you would have to pay for. And you have some more general widgets like an image carousel, a gallery, a progress bar, and so on. So quite a few features, quite a few widgets. So if you want to add content, you basically just drag items into the individual columns. So for example, I can put a heading here and I can edit the text either here or here on the left in this box. So I can type, for example, okay, I can also add, so of course I need to click here, or actually I need to click here in this top right corner. We change to this widget view where you can add elements, right? And when you click on this icon in the left top corner, you have some basic settings, right? So, or you can just go back or click on this icon here. But when you click on the individual items here on the page, like a section, you will see the settings for those individual items. So if I now click on this one, you've got this editing icon. You can see the settings for this element, right? So now if I want to insert another element, for example, some text, I can click here again and I can for example, drag this text editor, and when this blue rectangle appears, then that means I can drop it here. So if I drop it here, you can see that the text is put here, and I can edit that text, right? So let me just get some lorem ipsum text. Let's have just one paragraph, or maybe let's have number of sentences, for example, 8 sentences. Generate. Okay. So I can paste them. I can paste them here. So we have a little more text, right? And for example, on the right, in the right hand column, I could have an image or a video. So let me just drag an image here. And you can select an image. So I have a few images here from our previous work. So just for the time being, let's select this one. Of course, the original is too large, so we would need to either look for a smaller version or just scale it down in an application. Right, and of course you can set the size here, but of course it will be scaled down anyway to fit in this area, right? Okay, so if I click on any of these, I can of course go to the settings. I can edit the settings. I can edit the settings of the columns. So basically, if you click here, you're editing the settings of the section. If you click here, you're working with the columns. So these are the settings for the whole column, right? So you can see you've got the layout, you've got the style, so things like background, border, typography. Although this would normally be edited in the individual elements. And you've got some advanced features. Okay, and when I click on any of these, again, I've got the content in this case, the style, so things like text color, typography, so the type of font, so the different settings for fonts, basically, and some more advanced features. Okay, and the same goes for an image. So here you can choose your image, you can add a caption, and again you can set things like width, opacity, and some extra things like borders, border radius, and so on. And again, some more advanced features can be found here. And let me add another section so that we can look at a few other features. So you can add a new section, and let's add a different layout, perhaps, maybe something like this. Okay, so again, a 2-column layout, but the columns differ in width. However, you can still edit that, so you can even drag the columns, no problem. So you can do that with any layout, obviously, and it shows you the percentage, because the percentage has to add up to 100, obviously. You can also edit those values here on the left in the settings. So if I click on this, so I go to the column settings, then under layout you can see this percentage here, right? But if I make it bigger, the other one will get smaller. Which actually is strange, because sometimes this other column actually drops down. But here it seems to automatically be adjusted, which seems to make sense. Right, so if I click on this one, you can see that the column width has changed to 38, which of course is 100 minus 62. Right, so let me just reset that. So let me go back to 50%, and you can see that both columns are the same width. So we have this second section that we're working with, and let's add some more content. So again, I'm clicking on this icon here, or I could click on the plus sign here, and we get all these widgets. So I'm going to insert some more text. Okay, and I'm going to look at the style, and let's make this section. So let's go to section settings, and let's have a different background. So you can see you've got background settings for the whole section. You can also set backgrounds for individual widgets, no problem, or for individual columns. Right? So let's set this background for the whole section. And of course, here at the top, you can see that I'm working with the section, just to make sure. So I need to click on the type of background. So we've got classic, which basically means color or image. So if I click on that, I can have a solid color or an image. I could also have a gradient, a color gradient, a video, or a slideshow. So if I select the classic background type and the color, and I could set the color to this kind of blue, nice blue, which will go nicely with the font here. Although perhaps not as nicely with this color, right? Of course, as I said, we can disable this header area if we don't want to have this. If it's a one-page website, then we don't necessarily want this, because we're going to design everything in Elementor, including any title sections and so on. If we have more pages, then perhaps it's good to have this common top and bottom area. It all depends on your goals. But let me just stay with this color, because this is just for demonstration. We'll start working with an actual website in a moment. So we've got this background color, and of course I can edit the text color. So I go to text editor. So you can see that I've got edit text editor. So I'm working on the text editor now. Okay, and text color. So of course I can change the text color to something darker or something brighter, depending on what will look better. I might decide on white, and I might also decide that this is some kind of special section and it needs a larger font. And by the way, if you change the color of any element, so if you click on this color switch and you select a color, a new color from these color settings. So for example, if I select some kind of yellowish color, I can add it to this color palette, and so I can use it later. And that's important because you want to have, since you're not working with the actual code with CSS, where you would just define a color for a group of or a given type of element, for example. Here you're doing everything visually, so it's good to have these colors saved for later use so that you can use the exact same color for different elements. Right, but I'm going to use white anyway. And of course I can go to content again. And here of course you can change the type of, basically the style of text, right? Or you can just edit it manually. So there's also the alignment option. So you might want to have it justified, for example. You might also have this text in columns, right? So you can see that there are lots of possibilities. You can set the gaps between columns and so on. Okay. Also, you can actually go to the full screen mode if you need more space, and you can just edit everything here. So let me just go back. Okay, so I would like to make this text a little bigger. You can also see that I can do some editing from here. So I can change the type of heading, the type of style, basically. I can make it bold, I can make it italic, and so on. Right, so let me go to style. Right, so you've got typography here. So these are the font settings. So if you want to manually change the type of font for this text, you can of course change the font family. So basically the type of font that you want, and you can see that we've got system fonts, which are those commonly used and commonly installed fonts on most computers, like Arial, like Helvetica, like Georgia. But you can also use web fonts from Google, and there are literally hundreds of those. And you can see you've also got a preview of each of the fonts. If you scroll down and wait a little bit, you can see that the previews are loaded in, right? So if I select this one, for example, you can see that it changes. I can also change the size. So it usually starts with 0. So it first becomes very small, but then you can just drag it and you can see that it changes here. Okay. You can change the font weight, so basically how thick it is, right? So you can have bold or normal, but you can have these specific values which work for most fonts. Not all values work for all fonts because it depends on the type of font. So here, for example, if I set it to 100, nothing changes, right? Because there is a minimum thickness, so to speak. But if I make it 900, you can see that it becomes a lot thicker, right? So this font is actually pretty thick, pretty bold anyway. So we would need to select something slimmer, like this one, and then you would see the difference, right? So we start with something very thin, and then we can go up. And of course, these are all CSS settings. So this is something done in CSS. You can set font weight property inside CSS and set it to a specific value. So of course, underneath Elementor, this is all HTML and CSS as everything on the web is HTML and CSS, and sometimes also JavaScript and other things. But HTML and CSS are the foundation on which it all basically rests. So let me add another element into this section on the right. So this time I will add a video. So I can again click the plus button here, or the plus sign here, or the icon here, and I can select video. Right? So you have some sample video here, but of course you can edit the link here on the left. So if you have a video on YouTube that you would like to paste or just insert, then of course you can easily do it. Copy the address. And I can paste the content here. And it appears immediately. Okay, so at this point we have these few items here. We also have this header and menu area, which is inherited from the theme. We can disable that here in the settings of Elementor. So you can see that here in the bottom left corner, you've got the settings, right? And you've got the page layout. If you click on that, you can see that you have a few options. Basically, the ones we're interested in are Elementor Canvas and Elementor Full Width. So if I select Elementor Full Width, basically nothing changes. And by the way, if you want to view or preview your website, you can just click on this hide panel button, and then you can see it, right? And so this is actually what it looks like. So nothing has changed. So this was actually the default. But if I go to those settings again and I select Elementor Canvas, you will see that I now no longer see that header area or the footer area. So I'm basically designing everything in Elementor. So it's like a clean page, not affected by the theme or not visibly affected by the theme, because there is always some basic settings of the theme always work in the background, because everything in WordPress is based on a theme. So you can't have a WordPress website without a theme applied to it. But those settings of the theme are not really relevant for us here, right? Of course, you can still change things in the customize menu that we used previously. So if I leave this Elementor editing mode, by clicking here and clicking exit to dashboard. Okay, so first I need to cancel that and publish, because I want to publish my changes. Right? Hooray, your page is live. Have a look. And then you've got a preview in another tab. But if we exit to dashboard, we actually exit to the WordPress editor. But if we click here, we actually go back to the dashboard and to all these settings. So of course here we can visit the site and we can still customize it, right? And you can see that, of course, what we see here is the page created last week, because this is the default page. The page we created with Elementor is just another page that hasn't been set as the home page. It's just another page that isn't even featured in the menu because we haven't added it to the menu, right? So if you wanted to have another page or a few pages created with Elementor, you would just add them to the menu. But what I wanted to show here is that you can still customize the website. So you have all these settings related to the theme. So of course, most of them won't affect our page because they relate to all these items added by the theme, but some basic settings might affect our website. So you can, of course, we've got the site identity, so we still have this name of the website, which is Basic Web Development. It's not English language services, right? So we would have to change it here. So these fundamental options are still here. You can still change these things, and depending on the theme, you will have those different settings, which of course will not necessarily be visible if you're just working with an Elementor page. I hope that makes sense. It is a little complicated because you have this basic WordPress installation with its own settings. Then you've got the theme settings, of course, which we are changing here. And then you have this plugin called Elementor, right? So because it's a plugin, it just adds certain features and changes certain things in WordPress. It allows you to create and edit pages in a separate environment, but still there is a lot that is connected with those basic settings, or in other words, it still relies on those basic settings of WordPress. So obviously you just need to experiment, to explore if you want to learn more. Okay, so let's actually go about creating that website. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the theme, because we need a simpler theme. We don't need all these options that this particular theme has, because we won't be using them. So maybe they wouldn't be a problem, but just to avoid any conflicts, and also in order not to waste resources, because we don't need all these settings, so why should they sit there on the server, right? So let's install a slightly simpler theme. So of course we need to click on this cross here, and we need to go to, we can go directly to themes. Okay, and let's add a new theme. And the theme I'm going to add is called WP Ocean. Okay. Right, it's installed. Now we need to activate it. Okay, so the theme is activated. We can of course go directly to customizing it, and we will also have a preview. Right, so you can see that it looks entirely different. It's quite simple. we need to turn off these widgets here, although we don't really need to worry about them, because if we create a page in Elementor, we will just set our layout and this shouldn't be a problem. But of course we can change some basic things like the site title. So I'm going to change it to English Language Services, and it is shown here. And the other thing I'm going to do is the tagline. The tagline is actually not displayed here in this particular layout, but just in case I'm going to add it here. Okay. Right, we won't worry about things like icons, so we can leave that icon there. Let me just publish that. Okay, and of course, since we'll be using just one page, and we have just a few, or we will have just a few sections, we don't necessarily need the menu. We will delete all those pages anyway. So, by the way, let's look at homepage settings. Make sure that it's a static page. So that's the setting that I changed previously. Okay, so you can see that you have all these settings here, but probably we don't need to worry about any of these at the moment. What we need to do is to close this, and we're going to delete all the pages. I know it's a drastic step, but we want to do it. So I'm going to select here so that everything is selected, and bulk actions, move to bin. So it's moved to the bin, so they can still be retrieved later. So apply. Right, so we have no pages now. Right, we should also remove those menu items. So if we go to Appearance and Menu, because we have all these empty, invalid menu items here. Okay, so we're going to remove each of them. Right, we still have this home page, so this is the default page, which we will actually modify. So we have one page at the moment. So if I go to the actual website, okay, I need to save the menu first. Okay, and if I actually go to the website, you can see that this is this very basic format, the default layout of a WordPress page. But this is just the default blog page, which shows up if we have no other pages set up as the home page. So we can't really edit this page because, as I said, this is a blog page. It's not one of the pages here, because if we select all pages, we have no pages found, right? So we actually need to add a new page. So this will be our page, our website. Right, so let's add the title. Right, and that's all we need to do here. because then we're going to continue editing with Elementor. So we're actually going to disable this menu and header area and the footer area so that we can work purely on the Elementor page. Okay, so we go to the settings here in the corner, and for page layout we select Elementor Canvas. We can of course change that later if we want to. Right, so now we have a completely empty page that we can work with. So of course first we need to create a section. But before that, I'm going to show you this other option, which is to add a template. Right, so if you click on that, you actually have some templates. So we've got basically pre-made websites that you can use. Of course, as you can see, only some of them are free and the other ones are pro. So they are paid templates. And there are lots of them. So if you're working professionally on a website, then there is a lot to choose from. But let's try one of these simple ones just to see how it works, right? So we can select, for example, this one, which is for an agency. Okay, let's not select this one. Let's select something different. So perhaps we can have one for a hotel. Right, and we can actually insert the page. Right. However, you need to connect to the template library. So I haven't connected this account, this server yet, so I need to do it now. Right. Okay, and it seems I'm connected here. It remembered my email because I connected previously from the other server. But you might just need to register if you actually want to use this feature, right? So I have it here already, and you can see this nice layout, right? So all of these items are actually created in Elementor. So there is no separate area that is controlled by the theme, like a header or footer. It's all here controlled by Elementor. And of course it's a one-page website. Right? Okay, so you can do that, but let me just go back, and actually Control Z doesn't seem to work here. So I will just have to delete all the items, because this is just a collection of sections and widgets and columns, so I can just click on those X buttons and I can quickly get rid of everything. Right, and I'm back to square one. Okay, so what else can you do? You can also add blocks. So you have just some pre-made blocks that you can add to your website. So this is convenient. You can see that again, some of them are free and the others are Pro. So you can easily just insert something like this one, right? Right, so you can just use those elements in your design. Okay, so I'm going to delete it again. And let's start working on this basic website. So the first thing we're going to add is a section, and we'll be working with the 2-column layout. So we have this section here at the top. Okay, and I'll add a heading. And of course, I will type the name of the website or the service. Okay, so now I'm going to change the font. So I go to Style and I've got Typography, so all the font settings here. And you can also see that you have these different units. So of course you could use pixels. Other commonly used units in web development are EM and REM. So these are just units. So one EM, for example, is just the normal size, the regular size of a font on a website in a given browser. So it's usually 16 points. So you can use this unit. For example, you could specify this as 2M, and that will be twice as large as the regular font. Right? So maybe we need something like 4, or maybe even 5. Okay. You can also use this VW, and this is not Volkswagen. This is viewport width, which means this will be pretty useful for responsive design when you have when you want your website to look good on all devices, because this is more like percent. So basically, how much of the viewport should that text or that element take? And viewport is just this area that you can see in the browser, right? So that might be a better idea, but we'll stick with EM for now. I might change it to 6. And in the right column, I'm going to put an image. Or let me insert perhaps a gallery or a carousel. Okay, so I'm looking at image carousel. So this is something like a slideshow. And when I click on the edit button, I've got the option to select all the images that I want. Of course, the images should be the same size. So if you want to find some images, there is this website. Of course, there are lots of websites with free images, but I found this one, which is called PX Here. So if I click on this, this is the address, PX Here, and it has completely free images under the CC0 license, Creative Commons 0, which means you can use them for any purpose. Okay, so let me just type in something such as school. Okay, and we have some images here. So we need something that will be half the width of the browser window. So something around 1000 in width. So something like this might do the trick. Okay, and it's already been downloaded, I think. So I can quickly download 2 or 3 more images. So perhaps I'll download this one, and I select the same size. Okay. And I'll select this one. And again, this size. Okay. Right, perhaps one more. So let's have this one. Okay, so back to Elementor. I'm going to upload files, select files, and I have these images here. Okay, why do I actually have 2? I'm going to sort by date so that I see the latest ones. Okay, so I've got this one. Did I download the same image twice? Right, so you can select as many images as you want, and then you create a new gallery and insert gallery. Right? But of course, in this case, these are the same images showing up all the time, right? But we may change the image size to, for example, large. Okay, let's see how that works. Not very well. Well, actually, that's not the setting. Slides to show, right? We want just one slide to show at a given moment, and we can just switch between them. And of course, we have all these other settings, whether these dots should be shown here, whether there's any link, so whether clicking on that slideshow should take us somewhere, and some additional options like autoplay, which we might want to switch off. Okay. So let me also modify this font, because we want this to basically occupy this whole area. Maybe we want to add some padding as well. So if I go to typography, and in size, I can set this to this VW, viewport width, and then I can set it to, if I set it to 10, that's the maximum value. But if we add some padding, we might want this to be a little smaller. Right, so in advanced settings, you've got the margin and the padding. So currently you don't see anything because you've got the default values, which are probably 0 at this point. So we might add some padding, and this is turned on, link values together. So that means that we can modify all of them at once. Right, so we can have something like 32 here. And let's also change the background for the whole section. So if I click here, I've got the section settings, and I can go to style, and here for background, I can set the background to a certain color here. Okay, so something like that perhaps, just to demonstrate how it works. Okay, right, so we're going to add another section. So I can just duplicate this section by right-clicking and selecting duplicate. And we have the same section, but this time I'm going to get rid of this text. So I can just right-click here and click delete. And instead I'm going to add an image. So I can just click here and I'll select image. Okay. And let's get an image. I'm looking for something slightly different. Maybe this one. And again, I'll probably select this size because on a full HD monitor, the width is 1920. So that's about half of that when we talk about width. Okay, so it's been saved and we can go to Elementor again, and here I will select choose image, of course, again upload files, and I've got the sorting is by date. Let's get newest first. So I've got this one. Right, so we have the image here. And instead of this one, we'll have some text. So I can get rid of that, right click and delete, and I can click here this time, and I'm going to insert text editor. Right, so we have some text here. Let's first get some text, which will actually describe. And let me just look at this original website. So the idea was that, yes, so we have some text here, and we have this third section with the contact form and the map. Of course, we can add or enable this header area later if we wish, or we can just add this kind of area in Elementor, right? We will also need this button that will lead us to this last section. Okay, so let's first modify this text a little bit just to make it more visible. Style and typography, and we can look for a nice font. And let's make it a lot bigger, so we can just use pixels, something like this perhaps. Let's change the color to something darker, maybe with a slightly bluish tint, but quite dark. Okay. We need a little more text, so let me just generate, for example, 10 sentences, maybe even more, because these are pretty short. Right, so let's go to content and paste it here. That looks good. Okay, we're not going to worry about the size of these elements, because of course you would have to adjust this if you want to, for example, the text to go as far as the image of the height of the image, or just adjust the image. But you can just experiment with the settings, right? And there are lots of settings, so I won't be able to go into all of those. We might leave this color because it actually looks nice if it's the same color. Or we could decide to change it. So you could click on the section settings, and in style, again, you would change the color to something that would look good, like blue, for example. Right, and that would also look interesting. Then you might want the text to be white. Okay, so we need that button here, right? The problem is that I've set this slider as a widget, as an object. So I won't be able to put the button over it. At least I wouldn't know how to do it. I mean, maybe there is a way to do it, but what we really want is this to be the background of this column. So actually I will delete that, and I will just work with the settings for the column. So I click here, and here in style you've got the background, and you've got the possibility to have a slideshow in the background, right? And we have these images that I downloaded previously or uploaded previously to the server. So I can just select them, insert, and we have this gallery in the background. Okay, and now we will add a button in this column. Okay, so I'm going to click here, and let's drag a button in here, right? So you can see that the button appears here. Of course, we will need to adjust the position or the margins and the look and the text. So let's start with the text. You've got the text here. So let's say find out more. Okay, let's change the background color. So we go to style, and we can change the background color to, I think we'll use that blue again. Okay, we'll also make this button larger. Right, and the border radius here is for this for those rounded corners, right? But if you don't want any rounding of the corners, you will just set those to 0. Okay, you can have a border around the button. If you want, you can have a shadow around the button. And of course, the padding is the area, basically how much space there is around the text. So you can set all of these, or you can set them individually. If you want, for example, the button to be wider, then of course you would just adjust the right and left. So I'm changing that to 40, both right and left. Right? So of course, in the background, it works with CSS, because these are the CSS settings, padding, margin, and so on, background color. But of course, we're doing this in a visual way. Okay, we might also want to, because if you want this button to be in the middle, then we will need to change some settings. So we can go to advanced, and you have the padding. So that's the padding of this whole area, right? So you can see how it gets adjusted. You can also select percentage, right? So you can say that, for example, this should be 20 or 30%, and this is more or less in the middle, because I think it's the percentage of the whole viewport. Let's see what it looks like when we preview this. Okay, but of course we can see the problem, right, with the text and the sizing. So perhaps setting that text to viewport width wasn't such a good idea, right? So we switch that back to some other units. So I've clicked here, and I can go to the style and typography, and I'll change that to those EM units. Okay, so let's have something like that. Update. Right. So of course we have this area on the right and the left. So this is basically the width of our page, right? You can also change that, but I think this doesn't look that bad. So you can change the settings for the whole section and look at the content width value. So you've got boxed, but you can also select full width, right? And then you can see that we use the whole width. Of course, the image doesn't use the full width because of the settings. You can see that there are just tons of settings, right? So I'm not going to solve all the problems. We have no time for that, unfortunately. So I'm just going to show how to set up this basic layout. So we have something that looks reasonable. We're going to add this one more section, which will be, so let's just add a new section basically. We can also click here and it adds it above. So of course we can move it, but I'm just going to click here, and again we select this double column layout, or we could start with a double column layout where the left column is narrower, because that's the target. Maybe not that narrow, but something like this. So on the left we'll have the contact form, on the right we'll have the map. So I'm not even sure whether that should be narrower, but let's just, we can always tweak it later. Okay, so here we need our form, right? So first I'm going to add a heading. Okay, and I'm going to type contact us. Sometimes typing here is tricky, so I prefer to type here in the panel. So contact us, right? And let's set the size of this to something like this. Okay. Right. So we also need to insert that form. And in order to do that, if you remember, when we previously did that, we inserted a code. But first we need an element to insert it into. There is an element here. It's not in this basic section, but it's, if you scroll down, you've got this general section, I think. And you have this shortcode item. Right, so we need that code and you paste it here, right? So actually on that other website, I just pasted the code into the text editor and it actually recognized it. But you don't even need to do that if you have that shortcode element, right? So let's get that code. So I'm going to update so that we don't lose any progress, and I'll go back to, by clicking here, exit to dashboard. And if I click here, and you've got this menu item, WP Forms. If you go to all forms, you can see that we still have that simple contact form that we created previously. So I might just as well use it. And here's the shortcode. So you just need to copy that. Let me close that. And right. And if I go to pages, you can see that I have this newly created page that we've been working on. And it also says Elementor. So it indicates that it's a page created with Elementor. And you can also click here, edit with Elementor. So you can directly go there. So here we are. And now I just need to paste that code. Okay, it's added a tab. And you can immediately see. So actually, when I added that to the text editor, it didn't immediately show. It showed when I updated the page. But here, this is a widget or an element specifically designed for those items that have this code, right? And you can see that it's the same form that I created previously, so it's got the same fields and this silly question here. So we've got our form, right? I can now update. And if I minimize this, you can see what it looks like, right? Okay, and finally, let's add that map. So yeah, so I go to this panel and I can add Google Maps. So actually it's in the basic section, strangely enough. So I can just drag it here. and we're in London, but we can easily change the place by just typing the name of the place, right? And we've got Przemyśl here, right? We can also set the default zoom, right? When the page is loaded, what is the zoom? We may want to increase the zoom or decrease the zoom. Let's set it to 11. I think that's reasonable. Okay. So this is where the headquarters of the company would be, right? Of course, you can change the height here, right? So you can just adjust it so that it's more or less the same height as the other column, perhaps, more or less, right? And update. And if I now close this, you can see what it looks like. Right. Okay, so of course we can decide whether we want these sections to be displayed the whole width of the page. I think it doesn't look good if this kind of content is displayed on a wide screen across the whole width, right? So I would probably leave it at that. Some items like some images, maybe this title, it might actually look interesting the way it is. I'm not sure about this design, but it's you know, it's just something to show how it all works. And finally, let's deal with that button, right? So how do we tell the button that it should go here, right? And you can imagine that you can have like maybe 5 or 8 or 10 sections on the page, and you can just move between them. So this button could lead us, you know, way down the page. So first of all, we need to add an ID, an identifier to this section. So in CSS you've got, or in HTML you've got these IDs. You can add IDs to elements, and then you can target them in CSS using those IDs. So you can target individual elements by ID, basically. So the way it works is we select this, let me get back to the editing mode. So we select this section. Basically, we want to go to this heading, right? So I can click here, and I think it's in the advanced tab. So you have this CSS ID, right? This is what we want to define. So all we need to do is to think of a name, right? So I'm going to type in contact, but it has to be, there can't be any spaces. Just as in CSS, you can have hyphens, for example, but you can't have 2 separate words. So it has to be one string of letters. So contact, so let's call it contact, that's the ID. Okay, update. Although I don't necessarily need to update, because clicking update just means that I actually upload the page, the new version of the page to the server. But if we go to this button, right, or you can click here because that's, you know, the whole button area, or the whole widget, right? But of course, only this area is clickable. That's the actual button. So here, what we need to do is just in this first tab, content, you've got the link. So where should the button go? And you can see that you've got this hash symbol. So you leave that because this stands for ID in CSS. And you just paste this. I'm sorry, I didn't copy that, but I can just type it without any spaces. So contact, and that's it, right? So now when I click, you can see that it takes us to that section. Okay, so we have this basic layout, right? Let me just make sure that I update. Okay, and let's view the actual website. So I'm going to click here, and you can also click here and just, I'm sorry, that's viewing the template, but you can preview the changes here, right? So you can actually see the website. I'm not sure about this text being moved to the left like this, but that's something to work on. Also, you can see that there's a problem with centering the button, or maybe it's just a question of setting that padding. But anyway, we'll deal with that next time, and also next time I will talk about how to adjust this website for mobile views. So basically, how to make sure that this website looks good on mobile devices. And then we'll also talk about adding some more functionality.